On to Cincinnati. Bill Belichick's famous quote applies to the Colts here in Week 6. Colts and Bengals Sunday, 1 o'clock, Fox. Your rare Fox game with a couple of AFC teams. Joe Burrow in the building in front of 12,500. Kevin Bowen back, another edition of Kevin's Corner. Chris Presley rocking his Vols shirt. Great effort for a half.
One half of football. That's all they gave me. But
yeah, great half. But then, that kind of unraveled from there. We've got gobs and gobs of Twitter questions, so I won't mess around here early on. I do want to hit just kind of briefly on it's just a bit astonishing to me how many people have talked about the benching of Phillip Rivers for Jacoby Brissett in the last 72 hours.
Yeah.
Two things stand out to me, Chris. One, they're both very average quarterbacks. They are not built to bring you back into football games. I think we can agree with that. I feel like at times we're forgetting what we saw from Brissett last season, again, with an 2,000-yard rushing offense. Right now, Phillip Rivers' rushing offense is certainly not giving him that. And then also, where was this chatter weeks 2, 3, 4? It just seems like it's very quick. And I know when physically it goes for quarterbacks, which I think we have questions, very fair questions right now about him laterally and outside the numbers and things like that. Boy, people really press the panic button quick. And yeah, I've seen enough of Jacoby Brissett, so I can't go there. I would be stunned if the Colts went there. It would take multiple games. It was really just a half on Sunday. Rivers played pretty well in the first half, but yeah, I've seen the Jacoby movie. I don't need to see it again. Are you surprised by how much though we've heard that chatter?
I'm not necessarily, only for the sense that we were spoiled for so long with great quarterback play.
For sure.
I mean,
for sure. Yeah.
We forget the quarterback limbo that other teams go through year in and year out, and a lot of the outcry has been, I knew when we got Rivers this was going to happen, but we've all said that the entire time. You're going to get good play from Rivers, and you're going to get some not so good play from Rivers. You just hope that you're on more of the good play side than the bad play.
Yeah, and again, his bad is really bad,
yeah.
Which I think rightfully so, frustrates the hell out of people. It's interesting when you look a little bit deeper in the numbers. I've had people say, well, Brissett at least has a stronger arm. He doesn't use it. If you look at, and there's a lot of kind of deep analytical numbers I've been searching for because I'm like, am I missing something here? I'm like, folks, it's, whatever. Rivers was an incredibly efficient quarterback weeks 2, 3, and 4. I know the competition wasn't great, but I'm like, I'd probably rather have Rivers than Brissett. I mean, I don't think either of them are going to get you to some great January success, but
correct.
At least I've seen that other movie with this regime. You haven't seen Rivers necessarily with an elite rushing attack, and I would say an offensive line that has underperformed based off their standards. But basically, there's a stat of average completed yards through the air, which, again, is a vertical passing stat. And through 5 games, Rivers is better than Brissett in that area. So, again, Brissett has the better arm, more velocity, whatever you want to call it, but he's not using it. Like, he didn't use it. So, that it is a head-scratcher to me. I would say the biggest thing that has to change for this offense is simply finishing drives, which I say simply because it's the last part of it all. Mm-hmm. They are moving it pretty well.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at their drive success, they're actually scoring it at a better clip than they were through 5 games last year, which I think might surprise some people. Everyone's like, did you watch Jacoby the first 5 games last year? He was great. This team, the 2020 Colts, are scoring drives at a higher clip than they were last season. Right now, they're 10th in the NFL in scoring drives. It's acceptable.
Right.
The problem is those scores aren't touchdowns. And I think that's what you're running into is when you get into the red zone, and this is where I certainly can hear some people out, you are very restricted in what you can do in the red zone. I think it's why, we saw it on Monday night several times, why New Orleans goes to Taysom Hill so much inside the 20 or in the 10. Because when the field is constricted and those moments of an open lane here, run lane, pass lane are so small, if you don't have a run threat at quarterback, it really hurts you. I mean, think about like what a subtle pump fake does in the red zone, or what a guy out of the pocket. How many times you see a quarterback get out of the pocket in the red zone, and in the secondary the coverage breaks down, or he just scrambles. No one's accounting for the quarterback. Like that's. I mean, Phillip Rivers, seriously, he might be the slowest player in the NFL. I mean that in all seriousness, and I know it sounds laughable, but the dude is probably the least athletic speed player in the NFL. He can't move.
Yeah.
He cannot move. And I think in the red zone, you just get so exposed with that, because if it's not that first or second read, he's not moving in the pocket one way or the other to really all of a sudden move the defense. So I would say that is an issue, and it's honestly why I asked Jacoby or Frank Reich today, as crazy of a question as it sounded when I said it out loud. I go, have you thought about Jacoby back in the red zone package? I know it didn't work out week 1, and I know Jacoby's not a great athlete by any means, but he certainly can move better than Brissett. And obviously Frank, was very coy of what they do from a game plan standpoint. But I also go back to something that I really, really I wrote this right after the Rivers signing, that the pressure on your O-line group and your wideout group has just increased significantly.
Yes.
Because you have a quarterback that wants to get it out quick, which means what? Your wideout's got to beat press coverage. Your O-line's got to be elite because he can't hold on to it very long and extend plays. And I would say both those groups, and obviously it's not just pass protection for the O-line, which outside of Sunday, they've been pretty good. It's obviously run game. You have to give him a very supported run game so Jonathan Taylor isn't seeing the amount of 8-man boxes that he's seeing right now. But this wideout group and tight end group is not creating enough separation. It's the analytical numbers. There is a stat called separation. Simply, again, your average route, how many yards are you separating? The Colts don't have a single player, Chris, in the top 100 of the NFL. 100. Last year, they had 4. Like in the top 50. Hilton, Pascal, Ebron even, Doyle.
Yeah.
There was an ability there to provide some opportunities in the passing game. This group currently is not doing that.
What do you think that is? Why?
Well, I think the injuries to Campbell and Pittman are huge.
Yes.
Campbell especially. And is it another year older and another year of injuries for Hilton and Doyle? Is it, Ebron, as much as we say he could get open, it was just catching the ball was Ebron's biggest issue. So we forget who Rivers played with in L.A. I mean, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and Hunter Henry. It's a pretty damn good trio right there. So I think that is something that we also have to keep in mind. Having said that, my 2 biggest worries with Rivers right now is this. The lateral arm strength speaks for itself. He can step up in the pocket for the vertical throws, the down-the-seam throws, but when he's throwing laterally and you don't really step into those throws as much, it takes 10 seconds to get there. What is his arm strength going to look like in 2 months when he's got 25 more hits on him and the weather's even worse, and there's just natural injuries? And then secondly, his decision-making has been freaking terrible on some of those picks. I mean, I went back and watched that pick on Monday, the pick 6, and tweeted it out. Literally, what was he? Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers could have a kid. Somehow, it's 2020, weird things happen, you never know. They could have a kid, a son. That dude ain't completing that ball. No one is completing that ball. That had no chance. And one thing that I think I said on the podcast after watching Rivers in training camp, he doesn't throw it away often.
He did say that, yeah.
And the checkdowns to all the running backs was a great outlet in training camp and was in week 1. They haven't been as abundant since then. Those tight ends haven't been, those are kind of his throwaways. That, to me, that should have been a throwaway.
Right.
And I don't know if he thought I was throwing it at Hilton's feet, but that was just a layup pick 6, man. So when him mentally decision-making wise it starts to go, holy shit. I mean, it's – so, look, the Colts are not in a good quarterback situation right now. They cannot come back and win football games, multi-score games. You've got to stay ahead of things.
Mm-hmm.
The Rivers you saw week 2, 3, 4, you were ahead of it. You were ahead of it defensively. You did enough offensively. So I think for the only way this changes, the run game's got to get going. Your defense has to continue to play at the level we've seen more than the other level this season, which will be difficult because the schedule's going to toughen up.
Mm-hmm.
But, man, this is flat out. This is a team that, when people are saying, oh, Rivers can be a top 5, top 10 quarterback with this offense, I'm like, whoa. He had some skill out there with the Chargers last year. Like, this is going to be you've improved it, but you haven't improved it that much. And that's reality. And that's what you're going to have to live with. So, I don't think Rivers or Brissett under center, man. I just don't see this team right now winning a game in the month of January.
Mm-hmm. No, it's very fair.
So we'll see. I mean, it's going to be, big game. Big game just for, his psyche, his confidence and whatnot. And, yeah, physically, you feel like he's walking up 17 or 18 right now.
Yeah.
And it happens. Father Time wins, man. And that's where, and I know we'll get into some of this with the Twitter questions, Frank's comments, which I know he definitely came back on Monday and, admitted, okay, my comments after the game on Sunday were dramatic and overdone and, he did not play whatever. And this is me talking. He did not play great football. But then when he ends it with the whole, he's a Hall of Famer, he'll bounce back. I have so much belief in him. This is where we're at with the Vinatieri stuff from last year, Chris, of you can't just hand me this guy's resume and says that applies 100% to 2020.
Yeah.
The NFL, more than any other sport, physically, guys deteriorate. It's just life, man, in the league. Hell, it's life in general, not to mention in the NFL.
Yeah.
And we're talking kicker and quarterback, two positions you would think longevity, can be sustainable. But, Frank Gore isn't the same running back he was a decade ago. Like, it's just – so when I hear that, I'm like, boy, that cannot cloud your decision-making. You can't sit here and be like, the Philip Rivers that I coached in 2013, 14, and 15 is the same Philip Rivers now. If you go down that slope, you're going to get what you asked for.
Yeah. Right.
And that's right now. If what the Rivers we saw on Sunday, if you continue to put them in those situations, you're going to get more of that. Mm-hmm. And this is more, I think it's a lot of, it's a lot of ripping of Rivers, but it's also a bit of, deservedly so, ripping of Ballard and Reich for believing that they could provide him the opportunities we saw week 2, week 3, week 4 on an every week basis. That's tough to do, to sustain that. And they thought that they could do that. And so far, when you've played the best team on your schedule, you haven't been able to do that. So, again, we might not see this come up again until November after that Lions game. But still, it'll be the looming cloud over this whole entire 2020 season.
Absolutely. All right, Twitter questions. Let's jump into them. What do you say?
Yes.
This one's from Clayton. Says, I know Ballard is looking for the right guy to draft because he might only get one shot at drafting a quarterback, but how long is he allowed to keep his job while looking for the guy? He obviously didn't like any of the top quarterbacks in the last draft, and with the defense playing like it is and the lack of offensive production from the quarterback spot, it seems like it's almost a now or never in a quarterback class that I don't think has the depth that 2019 did.
Yeah, this is a really good question, Clayton. It will come down to that. Just thinking out loud, I think the leash is pretty long from Jim Irsay with Chris Ballard. I would think he's going to get at least, I would probably say 2 drafts. I'd be very surprised if, I don't know, maybe the wheels would fall off and Ballard, would be gone. But I would think he's going to get 2 drafts. But in my opinion, I don't know how you look at your current quarterback situation and think something significant shouldn't happen in April. Good news, Ed Dodds is watching Trey Lance. I mean, seriously, that shows you the Colts are paying attention and know full well what the long-term view looks like at that position. But, it goes back to his first press conference here, and, it's not about one guy and this and that, and it's like, I get it, that sounds good, and you do need to build a nice roster around that quarterback, but look at your record with luck and without luck in this regime. It's been about one guy.
Right.
So that to me would say, here's my feet to the fire. You got to do something in April.
This question's from Madison. How good is Grover Stewart really? Says, I think he flies so far under the radar that we don't realize how good he is, especially against the run, until he is out of the game.
Yeah, it's a great point, Madison. I would totally agree with that. We talked about it, Chris, when we were saying kind of breakout players, Kamoko Ture, Paris Campbell, obviously health dependent. Unique body types is a phrase that I use often. That's Grover. He is a very unique body type for that D line. If you literally go out to practice, he stands out. I mean, obviously Buckner stands out because he's freaking huge, but Grover is literally the only 6'4", 320-pounder, 310-pounder. I think he's lost a little bit of weight, but still, I mean, he is a wide body compared to the rest of that group. So he deserves a second contract next spring without a doubt. And really, of that 2017 draft class, there's a lot of misses, in that draft. He is certainly not one of them. Right. An absolute hit for sure, solid double, whatever you want to call it for your baseball analogy, out of Albany State, a very small school. You knew there was going to be some time to develop him, and he's really shown up the last 2 years. Colts have been great. Outside of special teams, Chris, run defense, by far the best aspect of this football team through the first 5 weeks.
Yeah.
And great on Sunday.
Josh asks, what's up with the lack of rotation on the defensive line? If the starters are struggling to generate pressure, why not bring in Lewis or Banagoo for a few snaps?
Yeah, Josh, something I asked Matt Eberflus on Tuesday. I'll say this, what have Banagoo and Lewis given you when they've been on the field this year? Lewis had the 1 sack, and I think that's his only tackle all year. Banagoo really quiet. Al-Qadim Muhammad, honestly, is the guy in that reserve unit that's probably given you something, even though he was super quiet early on and then did have the sack last week. To me, I think it's more blitzing and less of rush 4 and drop 7, which is such a popular thing with this system, especially Eberflus. So I'd like to see more pressure with blitzing because I just think you're then forcing a quarterback to try and identify pre-snap where pressure could be coming from. If you're just going to rush 4, Banagoo or, whoever, Houston, okay, you at least know where the 4 guys are and you know how to handle your pass protection. If you're blitzing, doing things a little bit exotic pre-snap, now Joe Burrow's got to identify. And you talk about a dude that's been sacked a lot. Holy, let's pray. That's all 3 seconds of silence for Joe Burrow. His physical health. Amen. I mean, dude, 70 sacks.
I know.
On pace for. I'm just glad he's healthy for this game. I'm like, selfishly, I'm like, hey, I just want to see you play against the Colts and then, whatever, which sounds mean. But seriously, Josh, the future of the D-line is what I'm worried about with this question. Lewis, Banagoo, Ture, obviously, if/when, I assume he'll be back in November. Really, because all those, 1-year contracts, Autry, Houston, Stewart, Muhammad, then those second-year or the second-round picks that are coming up on their deals. Muhammad, I think, is a free agent as well. Yeah, it's been disappointing for me. I just think the starters are playing so well, and the backups aren't giving you enough. That's why you're seeing the starters play as much as they have up front.
Fair. Jay Will has a hypothetical. Assuming the team likes Eason as the future, and assuming Rivers plays like he has, the question has been raised, do you bring back Rivers? His twist on it is, so you bring him back to continue mentoring Eason at a significant price reduction under his current level of play, or do we just saddle up and get Eason in next year?
Well, my first thought is Phillip Rivers ain't coming back to be a backup. And I don't know if that's what he's asking, but when I hear mentoring Eason at a significant price reduction, I would assume that means that, you're pretty much mentoring him. A question that I have, and I was filling in on the morning show this morning and asked Stephen Holder this, how bad does it have to be for the Colts to move on? 1 week ago, Chris Ballard is uttering the phrases of, he's playing great football and more than we could have, and I'm paraphrasing, and I'll try and find the quote before the podcast is over, but does one half just all of a sudden totally change that? The Colts feel like this is a 2-year thing. Reich especially. But I've said it all along. The best thing Ballard did was just 1 year. So if this trend, and hell, I said this during the offseason. If I was running the show, there would have been no Band-Aid. There would have been no stopgap. It would have been, here's the rookie. That's the best chance to win long term, especially when I'm getting a bunch of dudes. They're all a bunch of dudes. You know, say what you want. Newton, I don't see him lasting 16 games. Bridgewater ain't winning you games in January on a routine basis. You know, whoever, Dalton, Mariota, whoever else you want to throw in there. Foles, they're all just kind of meh. Rivers is meh. You know, it's just like you have to be so good in those other areas to win with that quarterback. I can't see a Tannehill type of season from these guys. You know, Tannehill's a former top 10 pick, still age 30 or however old he is. I think he's the same grade that I was. So it's just how bad does it have to be for the Colts to move on? I'd be saddling up and getting Eason in there.
Right.
But I got to stress, like, my opinion is probably a lot different than what they're thinking internally. For now.
Yeah.
For now.
Chase says, I've been a bit of an apologist thus far, thinking the vanilla play calling was due to leads and the points would be there when we needed them. But it really did feel like the game was out of reach and we were down 20 as soon as we got behind. I understand personnel can fluctuate, but how much confidence do you have in Reich if we go down 2 scores in the second half to a Kansas City, Baltimore, or Buffalo come January? And then, what about Rivers? Anything less than complete confidence is frustrating, as this season is a waste, and they will be until they have a real winner at that position.
Yeah, I mean, I have no confidence whatsoever in coming back from 2 scores against those teams. Yeah, absolutely no confidence. You got to play with a lead against them. You got to play keep away. And that's for both. I mean, Reich and Rivers, I guess. I just never believed this was a team that was that capable of winning on the road in those venues. And that's, with how Tennessee looked last night, man. I mean, winning this division is, talk about a mountain-like climb with how Tennessee looked. You're going to have to go on the road. See, you better pray you're in a bubble or something, because I just can't see this team, again, winning away from home, especially if you get down in those games.
And then Chase follows up with a more fun question. Who wins in a foot race, Campbell, Hines, Taylor, or Rodgers?
Ooh, I like that one. Campbell, Hines, Taylor, Rodgers. I would say I still haven't seen Rodgers open it up. Like, I know he had the big kick return, but I still didn't feel like he needed to open it up. I'll say Campbell nips Rodgers at the tape.
Okay. This one comes from Scotty. If we lose this game because horrible defense planning and dumb interceptions, will anything change for the Colts?
You think he's talking firings? I mean, that's I don't know what exactly the changes would be. This is a 3-3 football team. If you were to lay the dud of all duds on Sunday, I can't see anything. Yeah, firings or basically, I think it's going to take 2 horrific games from Rivers, not halves, games from Rivers for the Colts to bench him.
Okay.
And as far as the defense, yeah, I mean, you're not firing Eberflus. Yeah, I don't know what Scotty wants.
Craig has a 2-parter. Says he hears Frank Reich scripts the offensive plays, normally 16 to 20, and we've had great success, 4 touchdowns during opening drives. Do you think this will expand?
Yeah, I mean, yes, everyone scripts the first 15 plays of a game. I also think that script can go out the window pretty quickly. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna get 4 yards in this play, 6 yards in this play. Oh shit, did the script have a holding penalty in there? Did the script have a pass interference penalty that just got me 30 yards? Like,
right.
No, it just, they've had really good success early in games, and I wish I had a better better reasoning, and they are the same way of why they have had that. Certainly, I think a script, to a degree, it helps. Maybe there's some slight adjustments made after opening drives that teams start to get into. But yeah, it is interesting, Craig. They've had 4 of their 8 touchdowns are on opening drives.
And then on the defensive side, Craig feels like the Colts do make great adjustments at half, only giving up 3 points to Cleveland. Is Eberflus that great at the half, and how can we put together a better game plan from the start?
This might be harsh, Chris, but I just don't put that much stock in the Colts' second half effort on Sunday in Cleveland. I mean, sure, it kept you in the game, and I'm wrong on this. I know I'm wrong, and I should give more credit. But when you give up 20 and a half, I think Cleveland's mindset changes at halftime. A little bit pedal off the metal there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Landry had some horrible drops in that second half. Yeah, I mean, Okereke and Walker, I should commend them on the plays that they made there, but it's just, I can't. I mean, great adjustments at the half. You just gave up frickin' 20 in the first half. I would hope there are some adjustments being made.
Yeah.
And Cleveland obviously is not going to be as aggressive with a multi-score lead like they were.
Jacoby's Burner and Jacob both have similar type questions. Who are realistic options for the Colts around the trade deadline, and have you heard anything associated with trades?
Well, no, I haven't heard anything this early because we are early. November 3rd is the deadline. I think a bye week will probably be the better evaluator. And this is a question we'll get a lot, and I think a big question is how, when, now are you?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think if you are really in this win-now mode and you think, I don't think there's a trade out there you can make that all of a sudden would greatly shift my thinking. Because think about this, Chris, too. You're going to have to make a trade before you play another playoff team. You know, Detroit's November 1st. I mean, that's 2 days before the trade deadline. So you're going off of literally.
Yeah.
I guess we think Cleveland's a playoff team. Chicago, I don't really know what we think. Basically, you've played one playoff team, maybe two. And that's what you're going off of. So I think the NFL trade deadline, unfortunately, is really overblown. It's not like Major League Baseball or even the NBA's deadline. So I still don't think the Colts, I don't know if they've ever made a trade under Ballard at the deadline. I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Me either.
So, yeah, I don't want to say that I'm, like, punting on the season by any means, but, like, I just am so protective of draft picks unless I really think it can make a huge difference in the month of January.
As is Ballard.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I mean, Ballard for sure. My mindset is probably different than Ballard's, though, even. You know, I think Ballard's is like Ballard definitely wants to keep his picks, but I just think there's a little bit more of an internal belief of the roster, like, we'll get it turned around.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is more of, I don't think this year's going to reach that goal, so I want everything in the cupboard still.
Gotcha. This one comes from Jason. If the Colts are truly all in this year, how can you not be on the phone with Atlanta for a Ryan trade? Bad Rivers is not just a 1 week occurrence.
Yeah, I mean, is Matt Ryan the difference? How many times have you ever seen a quarterback get traded in season and do something? You know, Matt Ryan's got a better arm than Phillip Rivers, but holy hell. I mean, that Atlanta team has gobs of talent and just seemingly can't get it done. So, yeah, I'm not wasting a draft pick on a rental that is 35 years old that isn't getting me over the hump.
And he gets paid too, right? I mean, he's signed a bigger contract recently.
Yeah, and I should probably pay more attention to the financials of it all. But, yeah, I mean, I just – is Matt Ryan going to walk in here with this football team and all of a sudden, I don't know. I just don't think, is he that much of an upgrade? I don't know. I mean, he's not throwing the ball to Julio and Calvin Ridley here.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
So, yeah.
All right. Creighton wants to know, or Creighton says, I think this offseason Jack Doyle.
One more thing, Chris.
Okay.
Sorry. Found the Ballard quote. Again, this is Ballard 1 week ago before the Cleveland game. I think Phil's playing at a really high level. ... He rattles off some stats. And then we couldn't be more happy to have Phillip here in Indianapolis. I mean, again, that's one. I don't think in one half. I think Ballard is a big believer in, like, ebbs and flows of a season and adversity hits and, you know, obviously every coaching cliche of 1 week, 1 week. Now, other people would be like, how do you watch that second half and not think that that is the Rivers that you're going to see more often when you are in the pressure pack games, when you are playing better competition, things like that, which is fair, totally fair. But again, I'm probably speaking more from the Colts here. It's like, I just can't see them. That would be quite the panic button to be pressing. I don't think that they look at it this way to do something so drastic in season.
Yeah. And I believe he said something, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. You listen to all the press conferences. They asked about how he judges the offense and defense, and is basically, are they doing enough to win the game, or are they losing the game?
Yeah,
and so far, you've won 3 and lost 2. Right. So until you lose more games than you win, I think they're just going to stick with what they have.
Yeah, I mean, period. I mean, that's exactly right. And again, I sit here and look at it and think, well, the measuring sticks of those 5 games are different. And, like, you saw a Chicago team bench their quarterback with a 3-0 mark. But, yes, I do agree with you in that I think that's how the Colts view it. But, yeah, it's just it's weird. I mean, his arm laterally, man, it's ugly. The biggest thing that has to change, if you start finishing off these drives, we wouldn't be talking about it much. And I know, again, it sounds like I'm saying it in such a simple way. But if you can start to get to punching it in and Blankenship is not leading the league in points scored, now all of a sudden, okay, you're scoring 27 or whatever, maybe even more than that, because they're moving it. I mean, if you look at their average yards per drive right now, they're gaining more yards than they were this time last year without the run game. So that goes back to my Jacoby, Rivers debate. I'm like, they're moving it without this run game. And, did we not watch Monday Night Football against the Saints last year? Did we not watch the second half of the season when I know I'm picking, 2 players that just are both not high-level starting quarterbacks in the NFL, but I don't know. For now, I'd probably rather see Rivers for a couple more games, and then, if it gets ugly, you know where I'm going.
Yep.
I'm going the Rook.
Creighton feels like this offseason Jack Doyle should be cut. $8.5 million is just way too much for a blocking tight end. Don't get me wrong, I love Doyle, but we have so many players we need to re-sign and could put his money towards a better tight end. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Creighton, his production certainly lately has not been at that contract value. I would say this, when you get to 30-year-olds on multi-year deals, these questions come up a lot. Outside of Mo Alley Cox, you don't have a lot of guys. You don't have any tight ends long term. Trey Burton's a 1-year free agent. And then all of a sudden, tight end just becomes a huge need. I still think it's a need in some capacity. I thought it was a need back in April. But, the cutting of Doyle would really put, a heavy burden on Mo Alley Cox for a team that is very multi-tight end dependent. So, I'm probably not there. I think it would save about $4.5 million, which is notable, but I don't know. I don't think I'm there yet.
1924 says, I get what you're saying about Rivers, but the man is making over $20 million and has to be better. At this point, don't you think Eason would be worth a shot? Look at what the other rookie quarterbacks are doing, and is Herbert that much better than Eason?
Well, he's 116 draft picks better than him. At least that's what the NFL thought, 6 overall versus 122 overall. Yeah, I mean, I get the question. Like I said, if I were running the show, I'd have turned the page on the rookie QB long ago, but that's just me. I value the position, I think, a lot more than they do. It's funny. I'm watching that Monday night game, Chris, and, Herbert just throws such a beautiful ball, especially down the field. And it got me thinking back to Frank's comment after the draft of saying, Eason feels like the best arm talent in the draft. Obviously, Herbert in that draft. And, certainly, we've talked about Eason, and if people really want to inject themselves with Jacob Eason stuff, go back to that podcast we did right after the draft, really, maybe springtime, about just kind of a film breakdown on Jacob Eason that's somewhere in the archives. So, yeah, when you see that arm talent, it's eye-popping. And, yeah, the whole $25 million, when you look at that number, Chris, I think it ranks 14th or 15th in the NFL for quarterback money on an annual basis. And, you look at Rivers' numbers right now, near the bottom in touchdowns, near the bottom in picks. What's the other one he's pretty low in? Quarterback rating. I want to say he's in the mid-20s. Completion percentage, I think he's 6th. Yards per attempt, 12th. Those are fine numbers. But I think right now it's the fatal interceptions and the capping of drives. Those are the two things.
Oh, yeah.
And if you correct that, the $25 million. Yeah, people look at the whole Newton thing and they're like, oh my gosh, he's doing this at that price tag and Rivers is doing this at it. So I get why it bothers people. Yeah, and that's very fair. He definitely has not played like the 14th best quarterback in the NFL this season, or wherever that contract value would slot.
Roop wants to talk about the future quarterback play as well, and potentially Sam Darnold. Do you think Frank Reich, who is a quarterback guru, could reverse what Adam Gase has done to Darnold here with the Colts?
Yeah, Roop, I'm probably the wrong guy to ask, because I just remember watching Darnold play at Notre Dame a few years ago, and he looked as good as Rivers in the second half on Sunday. So I'll admit I'm a bit biased. And like Chris, you have this Tannehill example, which is fascinating, that he's resurrected his career so well. But I just don't think that's the norm. And I would rather take a chance with my own identification of a draft player, the guy that is only going to know one NFL system, one NFL culture, one whatever. Darnold has some characteristics that are intriguing. I think it's a fascinating case study to see when the Jets draft number 1 overall, or wherever they end up, probably number 1 overall. Where he goes, assuming they obviously take Lawrence 1, but still, it's it's a whole scar tissue, man. I just can't get that out of my head.
Zach has listened to this podcast for quite some time. Never asked his Twitter question, but this weekend he was so irked that he finally had to ask one.
Oh, boy. Here we go. Thank you, Zach. I think thank you.
Why is Hines making fair catch inside our own 10? I love watching Hines play, but instead of making the fair catch, let the ball bounce and hopefully get out of there with a touchback. The yardage could have gotten much worse from where he made the catches. One of them cost us 2 points.
That was bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I talked to Bubba Ventrone, special teams coordinator, on Tuesday, and really wanted to talk to him about how great the blocking was in that kick return by Rodgers, but then I'm like, well, I've also got to ask you about Naheem. And basically, they have a rule, kind of 8-yard line is their rule, and that if the gunners get behind you, then maybe you field it at the 7 or the 6. Maybe. Probably more so 7. But at that point, you're probably just taking a chance. The ball's going to bounce in the end zone. And, I mean, what's the difference between the 2-yard line and the 5-yard line? Something like that. So that was a mistake by Hines. Bubba made it pretty clear that he's been pretty reliable and is such a good pro. I don't think he will do that again and whatever. Because, remember, he hasn't been a punt returner for that long.
Mm-hmm.
I know he did it late last year, but still, it's relatively new. Honestly, Chris, I'd have to go back and watch it, but I would say just if you're going to field it at the 5, 4, try and run with it. I mean, if you get 5 yards in that situation, it opens up your playbook much more. Like, if you're going to be crazy enough to field the damn thing, at least try and run and do something. So, I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at it. But, yeah, that was just a terrible mistake that was compounded by a terrible play call.
For me, that was the shocking point. Hines is normally a very, very smart player. I felt like once he made that catch, he was probably on the sideline like, dang it, I really shouldn't have caught that. Right. And then the next time out, I felt like he had trouble tracking the ball.
Yeah,
like, oh my God, he's going to do it again.
Yeah. I do remember that. He's not the most clean. Chester Rogers was a bit more of a smooth punt returner in terms of fielding it, catching it. This goes back to, I don't know, Tyler asked us, weeks ago about I'd rather have a trustworthy guy. It's like, I watched Notre Dame on Saturday, and they got Lawrence Keys back there, and he muffs it, and then they got a walk-on that they put out there. It's just such a kind of like stereotypical college thing of, here's our trustworthy guy that'll put his hand up and fair catch it all game long, and yeah, that's where you're at. But yeah, I can't. My head shakes at a lot of things from Sunday, Chris. It really shakes at the decision of that play call that led to a safety, and then the pick 6 by Rivers.
Yeah.
It was I've got Cleveland minus 4.5. That was the decision. I mean, it was like, what? Wait, what? It's Wednesday. I got to move on, but I mean, you can't fully move on.
Right. Matt's been thinking, Kevin, do you find it kind of shocking that the Colts, who just signed a 38-year-old Rivers, didn't think there was a need to draft a quarterback high, but a team like Green Bay, who has a guy who's won a Super Bowl and an MVP, did draft someone in the first round?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's funny how teams operate. Chris, I always think back to the story of the Saints getting ready to draft Patrick Mahomes in 2017, and then boom, here comes Kansas City trading up. And now New Orleans is getting Marshawn Lattimore.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I mean, think about that. You got Drew Brees, 2017. I mean, that's MVP type of Drew Brees. And yet, how long are you going to wait on this Mahomes kid? And what, you imagine the reaction? I mean, the Saints go from taking a backup quarterback for multiple years to drafting a corner that's probably their best or second best defensive player right now. So it's crazy how the draft just dictates so much. It can change in such an instance when you have no idea how it's going to be. But yeah, man, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, that is a pissed off individual right now.
All right, this one comes from AJ. Says, this was a loss that coming out felt more encouraging than disappointing. Our offense was what we believed it to be, but our defense showed a lot of grit. Even though they struggled in the first half, he feels like they dominated the second half. Eberflus made some really good adjustments. Considering how bland this defense has been the last 2 years, it's awesome to see how aggressive we were in the second half. I believe Buckner has been nearly everything we wanted him to be. The defensive line's attitude has completely changed, and you can tell that Buckner has made everyone around him better. This defense just seems to have a whole new swagger to it.
Yeah, AJ, I hope you continue to listen after I say this, but I couldn't disagree more with this. This was a loss that coming out of it felt more encouraging than disappointing. I'm sorry. I thought it was the best test of the year, and you failed miserably, defensively in the first half and certainly offensively in the second. I go back to the adjustments, after giving up 20 points in one half, and you would hope. So yeah, I can't go there. Buckner has been nearly everything we wanted him to be. I would say that is really well put, though. I still want a little more. Mm-hmm. I still want the individual production. I think it's a sack and a half and 2 tackles for loss through 5 weeks. And I know, and I said this earlier today on our morning show, and I had some people pushing back on it. You gave up the 13th overall pick, and you gave the man $100 million. That means you need unquestioned all-pro ability and production. And you'll have people sit here and say, whoa, other people are making sacks. Other people are making those plays. I've watched the Colts pass rush get 2 sacks in the last 2 weeks. 80 pass attempts. One against Nick Foles.
Yeah.
Statue. 2 sacks. It's about finishing plays. It's about making the game-changing plays. It's about Myles Garrett getting a safety, and boom, that his pressure changes the game there. So I've got high standards for DeForest Buckner. That rightfully so or not, that to me that comes with the price tag. When you give that man that much, gave up that much, and then give him that much, there is a very high standard. And I just want to see a little bit more than the 9 quarterback hits. Oh my gosh, that's a dream.
Yeah.
But finishing those plays of the sacks, a few more tackles for loss, that's what you want to see. And again, unfairly or not, this is the territory that comes with how I look at him based off what the Colts said. Because what the Colts said in making that move is this: we're good on holding off on quarterback for another year. If the Colts sit there at 13, don't make the trade for Buckner, that gives them a easier trade package. You don't have to mortgage everything to move up to whatever 4 or 5 to get Herbert or Tua, where you take Love, whatever your sort of quarterback dilemma would have been. So again, I know that I'm probably in the minority here. Buckner has been so good, and if I'm going to rank like the top 5 defensive tackles in the league right now through the start of the season, he's probably in the top 4, 5, 6. He's probably right in that age. But man, I want it to be Aaron Donald and then him.
Yeah.
That's what the Colts really need, because again, you've pushed back the quarterback thing for another year, and that's the biggest gripe that I think a lot of people, including me, have with this past offseason.
Do you think the injuries at the wide receiver position and what is, in my opinion, a steep decline from what we've seen from T.Y. with drops is to blame for Phillip Rivers' struggles? Says a short training camp with the receivers and ones he's been more comfortable with being hurt. He seems to love going to Campbell prior to the injury, and since then, he seemed a little chaotic. Yeah,
I mean, Tyler, I think that's right. He loves Campbell, and that was really disappointing. But at the same time, Jacoby played with a pretty depleted wideout group last year. So I can't just – you can't ignore that. Jacoby wasn't playing with a bunch of dudes last year at that position. So Rivers has got to be better with that group. But as I was saying earlier, you look at those separation stats, they're not pretty at all. Sure, there's plays where Rivers is missing guys that are open, but there's also times where I've seen the ball thrown downfield, and I'm like, holy hell. I mean, the DB's literally right there. And this week, you're going to see a very tight coverage. It's one thing Cincinnati prides itself on is they're going to be aggressive at the line of scrimmage, and so this is going to be something that we'll have to look at as well. But certainly, I would, and I'd throw Pittman in there. But still, Jacoby had games last year where it was a banged-up Hilton, Pascal, Marcus Johnson, and Doolin. I mean, so I can't sit here and act like that's an excuse for Rivers.
David asked, did you notice Nick Sirianni had the numbers 25 and 15 on his visor on Sunday? He feels like to him that means Paris Campbell might not be seen again this season.
Yeah, David pointed this out to me, so I asked Sirianni about this on Tuesday. And, he talked about how his own injury story and this and that, and how, he just felt like he always appreciated when coaching staffs, honored those guys, or, you're still with us, whatever you want to say. I guess I'll say this, David. I'm probably not putting a number on my visor for a guy who's coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see, Michael Pittman's number on a visor, Anthony Costanzo's number on a visor. It's just so, yeah. But I will say also, if I'm reading into numbers on visors, then that's like hitting on 17.
Mm-hmm. Brad and Jacob both have questions regarding quarterback play, saying that Rivers is going to hold us back. Feels like it's an upgrade from last year, yes, but doesn't feel confident we can win a playoff game. Lawrence and Fields aren't realistic options, and so the question is, would you rather use the capital to move up and get someone like Lance in the draft, or try and use the same capital and draft a quarterback, trade for a quarterback, I should say, whose teams don't seem so sold on them, like Wentz, Carr, Darnold, or even younger talent like Haskins?
Trade, baby. Team trade. Trade up in the draft. Yeah, and I'll, this will be a great offseason chatter, and I'll look into more of these guys, Wentz, Carr, Darnold, Haskins, but I'm team trade, man. Moving on up, you got to hope that, I don't know, that the Giants still believe in Daniel Jones and they get a top 3 pick. I don't know. You got to hope that, some of those teams fall in the top 5 and whatnot, but I am team trade. Team draft, I should say.
Robbie's got 2 questions for you. Given the noise around Rivers, how many Rivers jerseys do you feel has been sold by the Colts store?
Robbie, your guess is as good as mine. I can't say I've been out in public too much, nor am I scouring the small stands at Lucas Oil, but yeah, I can't imagine many, and certainly not after last week. I mean, again, this fan base hated Rivers to begin with, so I don't think anyone was like, oh yeah, got to go get a Rivers jersey.
Right. Second parter is, do you know where Andrew Luck lives?
Yeah, I do. I'm probably not going to say it, though, just for safety, but yeah, he's living here in Indy. Living life.
This one comes from Brian. What's more overrated, the Colts offensive line or Phillip Rivers?
Oh, it's the O-line. Yeah. Again, overrated is the key term here, Brian. I don't think, at least I never rated Rivers higher than top 10 quarterback in this league. So I'm not too stunned by the Rivers we've seen through 5 weeks. If you're going to tell me, hey, Kevin, Phillip Rivers is going to have the 30 whatever ranked rushing yards per carry supporting cast through the first, I'd say, oh boy, oh gosh, I don't know if I want to see his numbers.
Yeah.
But the O-line, I mean, everyone ranks them top 2, 3, whatever you want to say in the NFL, and they have been overrated. So, yeah, I think there's been more of a drop, I guess, from where the O-line expectations are to, the reality of where they've been this season. And again, it goes back to what I talked about earlier. When you signed Rivers, you put even more of a burden on that O-line and your wideout group to take a step up. Wideout group take a step up. O-line group to be as dominant as they were at times last season, if not more. And they haven't done that.
Matt's got a 2-parter for you, but first wants to say he appreciates the content and hopes the new family is well.
Thank you, Matt. Same to you. Same to all our listeners.
Says the poor coverage mistakes from the D in the first half, though corrected in the second. Hines' error, Rivers' offense, and the subsequent play due to injuries. The transparent admission and guilt shtick of Reich's play calling is wearing thin on me. It seems like we tend to overlook mistaken calls like that of Rivers' safety throw on the 5-yard line because he's transparent about them, and thus the barometer on how good this team can be becomes truly murky. Why do you think there's so much overthinking from someone who is so good offensively minded?
Yeah, it's funny, Chris. It's like when the really creative plays work, it's unbelievable design, total outsmart. Just, man, that's a genius calling plays. And then when they don't work, it's this.
Mm-hmm.
Why is he getting so cute? Why? It's such a fine line with it. Sunday's a perfect example. I've ripped that safety call and why you make that call, and then you see the 4th and 2 where it's, Hilton in motion before the snap, and it's a shovel option to Burton, and it's a, Taylor's running pretty much free after a great block from Pascal for the touchdown. Like, if for some reason Ryan Kelly snaps that ball and hits Hilton and the play's dead, people will be like, why the hell is Hilton coming in motion? Why are you trying to get so cute with it? You have the best O-line in football, just run it up the gut.
Yeah.
That's what people would say. So, one thing I'd probably push back on is, what's he say here? Reich safety on the 5-yard line because he's transparent about it. I appreciate Frank Reich's transparency on things, but I'm still going to critique him if he's, literally handing me the playbook, or if he's not going to say one word. Like, it's my job to, again, critically evaluate. So That has no bearing on it for me.
Here's the second part. It says, I was waiting for another week 1-like performance to come to this conclusion, but Rivers ain't it. Brissett isn't the move either, and I'm tired of being pretenders. How many more performances like Sundays do we need to see until Ballard and his own transparent self admits that this was the wrong move?
Again, I really think it's going to take 2 more horrific games. 60-minute football. Yeah, I feel like people at times are acting like he's Nathan Peterman Rivers. Like it's not. Folks, the dude was leading the league in completion percentage 2 weeks ago. Like, it's not been that bad. Like, to the point where you bench him, no questions asked. Like, that's just not realistic. So, and I go back to what the Ballard quote was earlier. And as far as Ballard, transparent self, and admits this was the wrong move, you won't hear that publicly until the season's over. And the only way you'll hear that through actions is if he's outright benched. Right. That's really the only reason you're going to hear that. So,
Zach,
people are fired up, dude.
They are. It does stem back. I really do think it stems back to the so many years of hatred, or just people not necessarily liking him.
Yeah, if his name was like Bob Jones, would it be different? Or I was thinking Butch Jones with your Tennessee shirt on, so that's what I wanted.
Yeah, I don't like him either.
No, sorry. You are right, though. It's part of that. And I think, again, when you physically see the limitations, that's the big – because I think that was what everyone said. He's washed up when he left the Chargers last year. All you heard from the Colts is the arm strength's still there. We're going to give him a better environment, all that. Oh, the arm strength is still a question, and you haven't given him that better environment. But then I'm like, wait, you're 3-2. He really has played one bad half in the last 4 games. Horrific half. Horrific. But really one bad half. He threw 1 pick week 2, 3, and 4, and that was off Ali Cox's chest.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like, okay, folks, and this is where I feel the YouTube comments. Oh my gosh, you're carrying Rivers water, this and that. I'm just like, folks, trying to give you an honest depiction of how I'm seeing it right now. I don't think it's been good at all, really. It's kind of what I expected. Ups, downs, ugliness, and stunning the future of your franchise.
Yeah. This question comes from Zach. Why do you think Frank blatantly lies in his press conferences? Says, I understand not wanting to be Bruce Arians, but when he says Vinatieri and Rivers are, quote, the least of his worries, end quote, it makes me not even want to listen to what he has to say.
Yeah, Zach, there's a lot of validity to that. I think it really frustrates people. In Frank, it's the preacher in Frank. It's the he's just never even going to sniff it. But I'm with you, Zach. When he goes there to the extremes, the least of my worries, Rivers played really good football on Sunday. That's when he gets to like, wait, are you lying to us? Seriously.
Mm-hmm.
I had someone tweet at me earlier today, like, either he thinks we're blind or we're stupid or we're both. And I think that's what's really frustrating for people. It's like, you can have this vote of confidence, but like we were talking about on Monday, why can't you say, yeah, Phillips got to be better, and we all got to be better? You just kind of quickly throw that caveat. But the biggest thing is this. Your words cannot influence your decisions internally. If that starts to happen, which it did last year when you continue to run Vinatieri out there, that's when you are going to get bit, and it's really going to cost you. Same thing, Brissett, top 20 quarterback, and you think, okay, he's going to be our starter. You say publicly what you want to say publicly. We'd all love fire and brimstone. That'd be great. You want to hear public accountability. But as long as you're doing it behind closed doors and the locker room knows, that's all that really matters. And I think the big thing with Reich is if all of a sudden he would go down that road, it would appease some fans. But I think that locker room internally would be like, wait, why is he acting like this? Is he starting to feel the pressure? Is he starting to think, okay, it's my third year now? That was weird. It was weird, the Reich we saw Sunday and then the Reich that we saw Monday. It's, yeah, I mean, he's a smart dude.
Right.
He knows this is a big year for him.
Mm-hmm. Ice J has 2 quick ones for you. With how Rivers played, do you expect any quarterback changes if this persists, either on the roster or via trade?
Yeah, I mean, we've gone over that. No. I mean, 2 games. Full games.
Side note, the wife and I are coming to the Colts Ravens on November 9th. Any bar recommendations?
Oh, here we go. Let's do it. Slippery Noodle, great spot before Colts game, right on South Street, outside of Lucas Oil. What else? What do you got? I love the Mass Ave area. It's not within walking distance of Lucas Oil unless it's a beautiful day and you really want to walk off the beers. But, yeah, I mean, obviously downtown, you got a Kilroy's, you got a Brothers. It's a little bit more of a lively crowd.
Yep.
Probably a little younger crowd, depending on your age, Ice J. Although Ice J might sound, that's a hip name. What do you got? You got anything else?
No, I agree. Mass Ave's always a good spot. Like you said, it's a little far, but you could scooter down. Depending on
you could definitely scooter
what the
down.
weather's like. I mean, November 9th, I don't necessarily know. But
right, I'm a big fan of Slippery Noodle. I think that's a good spot pregame. Granted, I've never been to a pregame bar before a Colts game.
The articles would look a little different if you were.
They would. Maybe I should.
This is from Kalu. At what point do the Colts consider benching Rivers from TD to interception ratio?
Well, that's the interesting point is the touchdown-interception ratio. I think that's what frustrates people the most, and that's where I totally agree with people, right? That has to change. You have got to be a more efficient team in finishing off drives because when you're not capping these drives and you're settling for field goals and then you're throwing these picks, it's a fatal recipe. So that, I think, is the one area, those stats I mentioned earlier, completion percentage, yards per attempt, quarterback rating, touchdown, interception. It's that. That is the one thing that I think you're really, really frustrated, rightfully so, about. So I think if it continues down this road, that's where you would consider making a move.
His second part is Taylor starting to become a Trent Richardson 2.0 with a vision, although still a lot better?
Oh, my God. Come on. Oh, okay, Lou. Trent Richardson and Jonathan Taylor in the same sentence. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
No, I can't go there. We had questions about Marlon Mack's vision in 2017 as a rookie, and he grew right out of it. I trust Jonathan. I would say Jonathan Taylor's off-the-field habits and Trent Richardson off-the-field habits. How do I put this? Slightly different. Yeah, slightly different.
Yes.
I'll just leave it at that. But man, all those 8-man boxes I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Taylor, I think right now 5th in the NFL, most 8-man boxes, which I find interesting. It's like 27%. Of course, a lot of 4-minute offense in there. Obvious rushing situations. Last year, Mack was like, hell, he might have been like 40th in the NFL. 8-man boxes, only 12% of the time. I'm thinking to myself, boy, the Colts didn't throw it vertically last year.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting to me. Were they not in as many 4-minute situations? I guess not really. They didn't really blow teams out. Maybe that plays into it, but that's interesting to me.
That is interesting.
I mean, the Colts are adamant. I think we got to be approaching the Taylor breakout game. Anthony Costanzo back at practice today. That's big. Got to think it's coming.
Couple more left here for Twitter questions. Conroy and Sincere want to talk about Jacoby. With all that seems to be going on with Colts Nation clamoring for him, do you think the Colts will give the kid a shot at some point this year, even if there's no injuries to that position?
I really would be surprised. Obviously I want to see it, but Chris, turning to Eason basically says, Phillip Rivers, you need to retire, and we've punted on the 2020 season. That's an in-season change to that move would indicate that. So you're a 3-2 football team. You're probably going to be 5-2. So record-wise, to get to the point where you're going to punt, they are not punting until they're eliminated from the playoffs. If you're 5-2, you're not going to be eliminated from the playoffs. Hell, maybe throughout the entire year. I mean, 7 teams make the playoffs. You got to think an 8-8 team is going to sneak in there. So, yeah, I cannot see it happening. I feel like at times we've forgotten that this team is 3-2. And in a 7-team AFC playoff picture, you're going to hold on for dear life and pray that you're somehow playing indoors and you get a lead and your defense plays well and Rivers throws it to the guys wearing blue or white.
Mm-hmm. This question is from Isaac. Is it too much of a stretch to say that we don't have a wide receiver 1? T.Y., Haskell, and Johnson are all playing with less than wide receiver 2 stats.
Yeah, I don't. Boy, that's. I think that's a fair statement, to be honest. On pace for 60 catches, 700 yards, I wrote today in my article on Hilton. So that's not wideout number 1. Certainly not what you need. I mean, you need Hilton to get back to his normal self so badly. He needs to get in the end zone this week, man. It's been a year. It's just, boy, you really need him to step up. You don't have any threat, any serious threat.
Benji asks, is this coaching staff capable of looking at the roster objectively? Says Rivers has done some good things, but his lack of mobility and arm strength are a serious problem.
Yeah, no, Benji, that's that objectively is an interesting word that you state there. There's been some decisions that make you think they don't look at it objectively. But, man, I'll go back to what I said earlier. Lack of mobility and arm strength. I mean, dude, I really think he's the slowest player in the NFL. I do. I feel like he's getting his like cleat out of mud every time he starts to take off. It's just, and then I watched Tannehill last night jump in the air. I'm like, oh my God, he's going to tear his ACL when he lands.
Right? I felt like his knee almost buckled when he landed.
Gosh. Yeah. I mean, the O-line has got to be so damn good. So damn good with Rivers.
Last Twitter question of this podcast comes from Abby, who is wanting to get a new jersey.
Here we go.
Wants it to be a player who will be with the Colts for a long time and who won't be traded or signed with a different team. Who's the best bet? Was thinking Houston or Leonard?
Oh, no, I wouldn't go Houston. Long time? Yeah, I wouldn't go Houston. I'd go Nelson. I'd go Buckner. Or Leonard. Those would probably be the 3.
Yeah.
I mean, long time. Yeah, I mean, Houston, yeah, he's looked like a guy that you'd bring back, but I mean, he turns 32 in January, I think. Yeah, Nelson, Leonard, Buckner. A little flavor there. Got a variety there, what you want. Hit it up, Abby. Or maybe buy a Rivers jersey just to support the store. We got that question earlier. I don't know if the Colts Pro Shop is getting a whole lot of 17s off the rack.
Yeah.
So. Maybe Eason. Who knows?
True. Okay. Looking for a bounce-back win this weekend, Kevin.
Yeah.
Bengals coming into town, like you said, Joe Burrow. Game's on Fox. What are your 3 keys for the Colts to come out victorious?
Yeah, controlling Joe Mixon, number 1. He's an explosive runner. Got speed, got size as well. I think he's the one guy that really worries you. Your run defense has been outstanding, though, this season, so I think that gives you hope. But just to make sure this isn't a competitive game in the fourth quarter, you need Mixon to be quiet. Number 2, get Hilton going, like I was talking about earlier. It's 18 straight games without a 100-yard outing. And this isn't so much for, this is a massive key to win the football game. I probably have one eye looking forward to the rest of the season, man. And, you really, really got to get him going. Rivers says he'll be better this week. Rivers talking about himself. I think part of that is a breakout game for T.Y. And then lastly, better rush discipline. Pass rush discipline. Burrow can scramble. He's been sacked, like we said, a million times, and we prayed for him earlier. But Darnold escaped too much. Baker made some boots and setting the edge and being disciplined in your rush lanes. I don't know if you go spy. I mean, that sounds crazy, but Burrow can make some plays happen. So, 2 sacks, like I said, in the past 80 pass attempts these last 2 games. Gotta have more.
Okay, so leads us to the final question. What is your prediction for Sunday's outcome?
Yeah, I am a 7.5 point favorite. I believe I saw it's come down a little bit from earlier in the week. I am taking the Indianapolis Colts 27-17.
Okay.
I get to 4-2 and get to the bye week.
I like that number. I was thinking around the same. I'm going to go 24-13.
Okay, 24-13. Yeah, a loss, DEFCON. We'll probably cancel the podcast, but no. Yeah, I think they'll win. I think they'll control it. And like we said earlier, this team has bounced back from bad losses. Sunday doesn't equate to Jacksonville, like in that level of competition, but in many ways it was a bad loss just in how it transpired. So it's needed. You've put, with the loss to Cleveland, you've put your back against the wall and saying you got to have this one, and then you got to have Detroit coming out of the bye.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, man, we'll be back Monday morning podcast. That might be our only one for the bye week. I don't know. Maybe we'll do another, but that probably will be our only one. And, if you guys have any questions, you know where to find me. He's Chris Rusty. I'm Kevin Bowen. Have a great week, everybody.